What up, everybody? This is your boy Dedrian Colon from House of Rasslin, and this is my review for the December 16th episode of WWE Smackdown from Chicago. Yes, my hometown that I reside from. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification so that way you are notified when the House of Rasslin drops its latest content. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. So, tonight's episode of WWE Smackdown. This was a very interesting Smackdown. I would say it's probably one of the more interesting Smackdowns in several months. And that's outside of the Bray Wyatt stuff that we've gotten the past several weeks since he's returned at Extreme Rules. But man, this was a fun episode, man. If you liked wrestling, if you liked a little bit of storytelling, you got a little bit of everything in this episode. The Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Bloodline storyline progressed. We got a surprise at the end of who's going to be a tag partner for Kevin Owens when he faces Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn on the December 30th episode of WWE Smackdown. And by me mentioning that, you probably know who it is. So I'll get into that a little bit later. But before I get into this show, I'm going to give you guys the results like I always do. So we had Liv Morgan and Tegan Nox versus Io Sky and Dakota Kai. Io Sky and Dakota Kai pick up the win. Then you had, man, arguably, this has to be the best SmackDown match of the year. And that's Ricochet versus Gunther. Gunther retains the Intercontinental Championship. And I believe, actually, it was for the Intercontinental Championship and the World Cup stuff. So yeah, Gunther defeated Ricochet. Then you had a very, man, I'm just gonna say it was a very interesting, fast pace. Man, it kind of had a rhythm, but like it was just really hectic. That's a good word, hectic. You had Hit Row defeat Viking Raiders and Legado del Fantasma in a three-way tag team match. So, yeah, I'll get into that match. That was really crazy. But looking at it, like I was surprised when I was covering the show and everything. And that's the thing. Like I got so into this episode because there were so many things that were happening in the way. Like this was a really well-paced show. I like the timing of everything. It flowed. I don't know. I think it's because it's Chicago. Like whether it's AEW or WWE, they seem to have some of their best shows in Chicago, New York, Philadelphia. They usually have their best shows in those cities, and that's not taking anything away from other cities, but it just seems to be a recurring theme and pattern with WWE and AEW and other promotions. But yeah, as I'm watching the show, and when I finished, I'm like, wow, they only had 3 matches. And the match that took up most of the time was the Gunther Ricochet match, which I applaud Triple H for that because that was a smart move. It paid off. And I'm sorry, there are going to be a bunch of people clicking on the YouTube clips for that match because that was a very, very good match. Like I said, this was probably the best SmackDown match all year and arguably, possibly WWE's best match of the year. It's up there as far as best matches of the year. Gunther and Ricochet, they really did their thing. Ricochet, man, I tweeted that it felt like when he was Puma and Lucha Underground, but it felt like more of his run in New Japan Pro Wrestling when he had those freaking legendary matches with Will Ospreay, and that's what it felt like. And it's like, ooh, man, this is good. This is some good stuff. And man, the Chicago crowd was into it throughout the match. The near falls and stuff, man, it was so good. But you know what? Let me get, like always, man. Thank you guys for being patient and give this video a thumbs up and a like on YouTube and share this video with your folks and everything. If you like it, comment. Let me know what you thought of this show. Comment below. So in the first match, you had Liv Morgan, Tegan Nox versus Io Sky and Dakota Kai. This match kind of goes with the three-way tag match that happened between Legado del Fantasma and Hit Row and Viking Raiders. just a lot of hectic stuff going on, a lot of movement. There was very few spots where you could, as a viewer, you could just sit and just enjoy the match because it was just something going on, and it was just really fast paced and hectic. And I'm not gonna say it was a bad match. It was just so hectic and fast paced that you really couldn't. For me, I really couldn't get invested in it to just like, man, let me sit. It's like, oh man, this is a really good match. It was a decent match, but the big thing about this match was there was a sunset flip power bomb by Liv Morgan. Um, then you had Bailey get involved and everything, and they go on the outside, and then this woman in a black hood does a kind of like a shining wizard or kick by the barricade, and then she's escorted off by security, and everyone's like, "Oh, who is it? Who is it? Who is it?" Uh, then Io Sky hits a moonsault. They get the victory. So that was basically the highlight of the match. Who is the woman in the black hood? And they walked her off and everything, and they get a shot. And like, man, who is it? Who is it? And it's interesting, and the power of social media, because maybe 10 minutes after that, someone posted a screenshot of the woman walking out the being escorted out by security in the black hood, and they posted a picture of Xia Li, and they're like, look, same body type, and it's like, yeah, that's her. And come to find out, was it in a WB exclusive later on in the show, they posted on their social media, it was Xia Li. Who would have thunk it? I actually thought it was Nikki Cross at first, but then after a while, I was like, nah, that's got to be somebody else. And it's funny because I've seen people on social media, it's got to be Sasha Banks. And man, that is going to be happening in both WWE and AEW till January 1st, and then we'll see where this goes. But that, I got a chuckle out of that. I don't have no problem with that. People are going to do that. But yeah, that first match, I mean, it was nice, fast pace as far as what they wanted to accomplish, as far as the tempo and the pacing of the show. But as far as like getting invested in the match, I really got invested when the hooded person came out, and it was like, oh man, who is that? Like, all right. Then we get a video of Gunther and Ricochet. They were hyping up their match. Or actually, it was more Gunther hyping up his match against Ricochet. Go to commercial, come back. You got Ricochet hyping up his match in a video package. Then we get a recap of the Bloodline and Kevin Owens 2 weeks ago. Then we get a backstage segment where it's the Uso, Sammy, and Solo Sikoa. They're talking about his haircut, his wardrobe. Then he asks the question, where's Solo? And Jimmy's like, he's with the tribal chief. And Jimmy's like, yeah, what's going to happen. Roman's going to make him a full Uso, Sammy Uso. And what's interesting about the Bloodline segments in this episode was that normally it's Jey Uso who's aggressive and, just, always talking and always boisterous. And in this episode of SmackDown, and you could say this part of the Bloodline storyline, you had Jimmy Uso be the talker, and it was so, man, he did a really good job. Like, he did a really good job. It was different, but the way his inflections and transition was when he was explaining himself, like it was, he looks at his brother and he's like, man, you're going to be setting him up for disappointment. Tribal Chief ain't here. Is like, come on, man. Like, you setting him up. And it's like, ooh. It's like, you can tell that they're slowly planting the seeds of an eventual breakup. And what I like about tonight, and I'll get into more of what happened with the Bloodline, but what I like about tonight is I can kind of see where it's going because of the tag match that's going to happen on December 30th. But when the breakup does happen, where the Bloodline kick Sammy or they break up, what have you, the Bloodline and Sami Zayn, it's going to be very logical. Like, I do see that. I anticipate that. Now, if it happens, that's another thing. But I do anticipate when they kick out Sami Zayn, it's going to be logical, and they've been planting the seeds um, since War Games. So it's like, ooh, okay, they're planting the seeds, and let's also keep in mind that next month is Royal Rumble. I'm thinking we're already in January. So remember, in February is Elimination Chamber, and that's going to be in I believe it's Sami Zayn's hometown in the Edmonton. I know it's going to be in Canada. So something's going to go down there with Sami Zayn, and from there, it's going to be full-blown road to WrestleMania. So it's going to be interesting. But, man, I love that backstage segment. It's like, ooh, okay, this is some good stuff. So after that, you had a recap of LA Knight and Bray Wyatt, which is, let's face it, Bray Wyatt and the Bloodline Sami Zayn storylines are the biggest, the top WWE storylines going right now. And quite honestly, thank God none of these guys are injured or anything like that, because, man, outside of those two storylines, a lot of the other storylines are very thin as far as substance to the storyline. And some, it's kind of like, all right, can we like wrap this up? Hint. The Miz, Gargano, Loomis, like kind of go somewhere else. But so we get a recap of that. Then they show footage from a QR code, which I can't recall if there was a QR code that was displayed. Maybe it was. Forgive me, guys. Comment below if there was a QR code that was displayed last week or sometime in between last week's SmackDown and this week's SmackDown. Comment below if there was. I don't recall seeing it on social media or anything like that. But Michael Cole brings up, like, yeah, there was QR code. They show footage of LA Knight being tied up and that, and it's just like, all right, can we like celebrate this already? And I mean, I have no problems with it, like, oh my god, this is the worst thing ever. But I do see where there's a section of people are like, man, this is dragging, like it's taking too long, like, can we like speed this up? And then there's other people like, man, this is perfect, this is great. I'm kind of in between, more so because I know with Bray Wyatt and his style and just how the stories were told with Bray Wyatt in the past, like it's a process and everything. I do think it's weird because when Vince McMahon was in charge, like his storylines, they had a nice pace, and then it just got to the point like, all right, we got to hurry up, and then they would just accelerate it. Seems like the opposite is happening with Bray Wyatt under Triple H, where it's taking its time, and it's to the point where it's like, okay, let's just keep it, let's stretch this out a little bit more. So it's like a complete opposite, where Bray Wyatt stories under Vince McMahon it got to a certain point where it's like, all right, we got to speed this up and let's get it there already. Like it's taking too long. And now it's like the complete opposite, where it's just, all right, let's stretch this out more. And it's just like, kind of need a balance with Bray Wyatt. That's what I see. Like you kind of, there's certain times you do need a balance and not go, to one extreme to the next. So LA Knight comes out. He says he's still knocking on Bray Wyatt's door. You dress like a circus freak. You keep saying you're a victim since you came back. And then you had Bray Wyatt come out. He's like, I know who it was, LA Knight. Then the lights go out. And this is when the lights go out, this is by the time that Bray Wyatt comes in the ring, and him and LA Knight were fighting and everything. So the lights go out, and the entrance lights up, and you have Uncle Howdy come out. Which, it is what it is. Yeah, that was very interesting. I don't know who it is. I do have my suspicions who it is. I do think that it could be Vincent, formerly of Ring of Honor and Impact Wrestling of Honor No More. I do suspect that it could be him just by the build. It could be, what was his sidekick? Butch or something like that in Ring of Honor. Yeah, his sidekick in the faction of Righteous in Ring of Honor. Go check it out and Google it, guys. So I do think it could be one of those two. I did it. It could be Bo Dallas, his brother. But I thought it was really interesting, and like the lead up to the reveal of Uncle Howdy, or Uncle Howdy coming out and everything, was cool. Once he came out there, then it got a little bit freaking hokey. Like he's just standing there, and LA Knight gets out in the ring. Bray Wyatt's laughing, and then they're playing this real, like, creepy, weird laugh, and LA Knight's just looking, and like there's smoke coming up, and it's just like, and there's just a shot of Bray Wyatt looking at Uncle Howdy just standing there, LA Knight there. I don't know, it kind of got a little hokey. I am curious to see who is Uncle Howdy and where that goes. I do like the fact with this storyline there was, the QR code, and then it's like, oh, it's Bray Wyatt. So I do like the pattern with Bray Wyatt storylines where there is, when you unlock a new mystery, or, when you unlock a new mystery, you open up another mystery. So I think that's really cool, but it's just the little things in between and the pacing and just that fine line. But overall, this was pretty cool that Uncle Howdy came out. So now, since he's out, when is he going to get involved? And man, it would be interesting if Bray Wyatt is in the Royal Rumble, and if Uncle Howdy would help him, man, that would be interesting. If Bray Wyatt actually won the Royal Rumble, which I don't think so, but you guys get what I'm saying. But man, it would be interesting if Uncle Howdy assisted Bray Wyatt in the Royal Rumble. That would be, they might do something like that. They kind of did that in the Royal Rumble in San Antonio a few years ago. I think it was 2018 when Orton won. So could be something to keep an eye out. So after that, you get a backstage segment of Roman and Solo and Paul Heyman arriving at Allstate Arena. Then we get to Ricochet versus Gunther. Man, this was a match. And like I said, this was the best SmackDown match all year. And you can put this match up as one of the best WWE matches all year. I would say this is right up there with Cody and Seth. If I had to choose, I would still choose Cody and Seth at Hell in a Cell, only for the fact that it's hard to top Cody Rhodes having wrestling with a freaking injury that he had during that match. And that's the only thing, like, that's why I would give that match an edge. But man, this is a strong contender for match of the year in WWE. As far as all pro wrestling, I mean, I don't even think you can put one match as match of the year in all of pro wrestling. Like, you would just have to put like, hey, these are the matches of the year, and like, there's no specific order. Like, these are the matches. Like, I think that's how it comes down, because we've had some great matches in pro wrestling this year. So man, this match started with Ricochet avoiding the chop. Then at a certain point in the match, you had a backbreaker by Gunther, which he turned into a Boston Crab, which, man, this was a great match. And man, I didn't notice it till halfway through the match. And I don't know why I didn't put two and two together. And I kind of see why Triple H is real big on Gunther. Because when you look at him, and as I'm watching him wrestle, I'm like, yo, this guy kind of reminds me of Killer Kowalski. I'm like, holy crap. So I Google it, and not Killer Kowalski that we're most known for, in his later years, once he retired and stuff like that. But when I looked and Googled a young picture of Killer Kowalski, I'm like, holy crap, that looks like Gunther. So yeah, if you're watching this review, go Google Killer Kowalski and put a side-by-side by Gunther and Killer Kowalski, and you're like, whoa. That's some similarities. I'm not going to say it's identical, but there is the resemblance and similarity. It's like, man, so I'm understanding more of how Triple H is booking Gunther, that he's booking him somewhat like a modern Killer Kowalski with more of a more movesets to his repertoire and everything. If that you guys get what I'm saying. But yeah, I like that. I like that. Gunther is one of my favorite wrestlers in WWE. I became a fan of his when he wrestled in NXT, and like the chops, like, God damn, those chops, like, oh my God. Like, if you had a chest coat and Gunther chopped you, like, all the phlegm that was in your chest would just come out your mouth, and you would not have a coat because that dude chops hard. But man, this match, like, I'm looking at my notes as I'm doing this, and like, I didn't write too much because this was just a beautiful match. Ricochet, I mean, he really displayed his athleticism, his agility. There were moves that he was doing that normally before, in his other matches he would lose and stuff like that, but they just gave him a little bit more. And it was like the way he was wrestling, there was a little bit more fight to him. There was a little bit more grit and aggression in his counters and his reversals. And it was just like he was one step ahead of Gunther at certain points. And it's like, hey, is Ricochet going to win this match? Because, man, this is like, whoa. And, he keeps kicking out, and, he's taking Gunther's chops, and he's taking his movesets. He's like, man, it was such a beautiful match. And Gunther, man, shout out to him. Man, this guy is a work of art. And, man, if we get Gunther and Lesnar at WrestleMania, I am going to enjoy that build because that is going to be fun and entertaining. And, man, if that match happens at WrestleMania, man, that's going to be low-key. That's probably going to be the best match of the night. That's going to surprise a lot of people because with Lesnar's repertoire and, just what he, we know his, background and everything, and just, what he's done all these years in the WWE. And then you look at Gunther and what he's done in NXT, and you put that together, and it's like, ooh, that's going to be a beautiful match. I like that. So at the end of this match, you had, which for me, which is the highlight of the freaking match, Gunther chopping Ricochet in midair. Ricochet's jumping off the top turnbuckle, and Gunther just chops the crap out of him in midair, which once that happened, I was like, yeah, Ricochet ain't winning. Like, nah, he ain't winning. So that led to, actually, it led to a little bit of Gunther and Ricochet. They were slapping each other, but eventually Gunther got the upper hand, did a freaking, you could say, a tilt-a-whirl slam type maneuver, got the pin, 1, 2, 3. He wins. Man, that was a fantastic match. The Chicago crowd loved it. They were into that match. After the match, Imperium, they hold up Ricochet, and Gunther's about to hit him, and then Strowman comes out. Yes, Braun Strowman comes out, makes the save, and they run off and everything, and he's, holding Ricochet's hand up and, pointing to him, and the crowd's cheering and everything. So, I mean, eventually we're going to get a Gunther Strowman match. I wouldn't be surprised if we get that at Royal Rumble. Now that I think about it, we might get a Gunther Strowman match at Royal Rumble. Could they be in the Rumble itself? They should be. But then again, if you want to protect big guys like that, Gunther and Strowman, the way they've put Strowman so far since he's returned, and the way they're positioning and presenting Gunther, I could see them putting those two guys out of the Royal Rumble and just having a match, which I'm all for. That's going to be fun. It's nothing like seeing two big dudes just beat the hell out of each other. Hey, I grew up with Andre the Giant and Big John Studd beating the hell out of each other. I can watch this. Then we get a backstage segment with the Bloodline, and you have Jimmy looking at Roman. And this is where I said earlier in this review that they're just giving us little seeds where when this breakup comes, where they kick out Sami Zayn, there's going to be some logic to it that's going to make sense. And I like this. So Jimmy's looking at Roman, and Heyman's in the room, and he's like, what do you got planned tonight? And Jimmy's like, man, I love Sammy. Sammy's my dog. He's cool. but I love the family. It's like, ooh, ooh. So right when he said that, it's like, all right. So they're cool with them, but when push come to shove, and you start acting goofy, you start messing up, and you're doing stupid stuff, we're still family, and you're not family. And that's where I see where it's going, where it's just there's something he's gonna do that's gonna screw up something for them, and then it's like, okay, we gotta stick together. We gave you every opportunity, you kind of, and I could see them positioning Sammy where he's kind of like getting big headed and everything, and not as aggressive, and he's I don't want to say overstaying his welcome, but getting too comfortable, too big for his britches. There you go. And yeah, I could see this happening. So he says, Jimmy, he tells him, I love Sammy, but that's my dog, but I love the family, and if you want to forgive his past with KO, that's up to you. If not, hey, we're family. And it's like, So it's like the way they're positioning this is like Roman and Heyman know, or they see something more than what the Usos see and what Sammy knows or thinks he knows. Like they're seeing stuff, and it's like, and it's like logically right when you think about it, guys, and when you're watching this review, think about it. Like they're positioning it where Roman has always been ahead of everybody in the bloodline, even Sammy from the very beginning. So he's seen all this stuff and where Sammy's at. But I'll get into what happened later on in the show, because a line that Sammy said is like, ooh, adds even more to it. Then we go to commercial. We come back. Adam Pearce is with Roman Reigns, and Roman and Sammy. He's like, Roman and Sammy versus KO and their mystery partner on December 30th. And, Roman's just like, yeah, that's great. It's better than here in Chicago. And man, that's good. That's a good heel. Like the way he said it, his inflection, his mannerism, and just sounding so dismissive. Like, yeah, it's better than Chicago. Loved it. I loved it, man. Then we get to Legado del Fantasma, Hit Row, and the Viking Raiders. This match, I'm not going to say it wasn't for me, but man, this was similar to the opening match where it was very fast-paced, chaotic. I will say, kind of remind me of some matches in AEW like earlier this year that were just so fast-paced and just like, yeah, it's good, but like, but no, this match, on its own, like, man, this was a very chaotic match. It did come across very rushed, and pressed for time, and it was just really hard to get into this match because everything was going so fast, and it didn't help that they had all these camera cuts, and the way everything broke down, like they mentioned on commentary, yeah, it's just everything broke down, and it wasn't like normally when you have three-way tag team matches like that, everything breaks down, but the wrestlers are close together. Like this was, you had some wrestlers by the entrance ramp, and then you had wrestlers by the announcers table. Then you had wrestlers facing the crowd, and their backs are to the hard cam, and it was just rotating like that. And there's a point in the match, and I hope he's okay, because that looked nasty. Top Dollar diving over the top rope, and man, it was just really weird. But man, I hope he's okay. And I know I've seen people already post clips of it, talking about botches and everything. Look, I've been in a wrestling ring. When you're in that ring, I'm going to give you guys some advice who like to criticize, and others who like, well, I've been in a wrestling ring. When you're in that ring, it is a totally different perspective than us watching it on TV or in the stands. Like, It's totally different, man. And I do hope he's okay because they eventually got the win. And before they got the win, like another thing I want to touch on is like you had Zelina Vega help Legado get an advantage before the finish. Then you had BFAB come in. Then you had Valhalla come in, and then they went. Like it was just very chaotic, and yeah, it a lot of people were just like, all right. And unfortunately, the way it came across on television, it came across like a time filler. It really didn't feel like, hey, this is a tag team match where they're looking to step up in the tag team division and get, a title shot. Like, it did not come across like that. Even though they said it on TV, and Michael Cole said it, it really didn't come across like that. And it's not a diss at the wrestlers or anything. It's just how they positioned them. I was surprised that they didn't put this before the Gunther Ricochet match. Like, now thinking back, like they should have put this tag team match before it, so that way it would have been easier. And then, of course, the way that match was with Gunther and Ricochet, like it would have been a perfect transition into the way the show closed, because the crowd was already up, and then you go into Roman, like it just would have flowed so smoothly. So before we get to the ending segment with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, we had a backstage segment of Raquel Rodriguez. She's in the back, and is it Rodriguez or Gonzalez? I don't know why I keep messing up her name. Like Gonzalez, I forget. You guys know who I'm talking about. Raquel. She's in the back, and she's with the trainer, and then out of nowhere, you get Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. They kick her in her left arm. They beat her up and everything, and I want to face her next week in the gauntlet match. So we'll see if Raquel Rodriguez Gonzalez is going to face those that are in the gauntlet match next week, because they kicked her in her bad arm that she had in a brace. So I don't know. We'll see. Now, getting to this ending segment. Let me drink some water for this, because this gets really good. This is the conclusion of this episode. So Roman Reigns comes out. He's got a new shirt. Sami Zayn's on the shirt. Really cool shirt. They're selling and everything. Get a big ovation and Usi chants. He mentions, man, we dominated War Games. Tonight was going to be a good night. And he looks at Sami. And he's like, man, we need to address something with Kevin Owens. Like, he keeps going after you. Like, you need to nip this in the bud. So what we're going to do, December 30th, me and you are going to take on Kevin Owens and whoever he selects as a partner, because we're going to smash him. And as he says that, Sami Zayn gets the mic and he's like, yeah, Kevin Owens, he always fashion me, I'm your friend. And they all look and they're like, and he's like, no, he was my friend. And it's like, ooh. Now, those of you who are watching the review, remember what I said, they're planting the seeds. Man, you're setting up for disappointment. Jimmy's line of, hey, I love Sami, he's my dog, but I love the family. And then Sami's line of, man, I'm your friend, and it's like, no, it's a mix-up. It's like, ooh. So it's either Sami is doing this to turn on them, or the bloodline eventually is going to turn on him. But there is going to be logic to this turn when it happens. And when that happens, and he's like, no. Lo and behold, on the screen, you have John Cena, which, when they announced Kevin Owens get a mystery partner, I'm like, it's got to be John Cena. When they announced the date, I'm like, okay, John Cena is going to be on the December 30th episode of SmackDown. He's going to be there. So John Cena gets on there and he's like, yeah, I got a text from Kevin Owens. And he mentions all these emojis that he sent them and everything. And he texts me, do you want to be my partner? And yes, I will be your partner on December 30th, because I've had a 22-year streak where I've wrestled every year. And this year, that streak would be broken. So I am going to continue my streak on December 30th. So we're getting Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens and John Cena. And what's crazy, I never thought that they would use John Cena to facilitate the eventual breakup of Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn getting kicked out of the Bloodline. I never would have imagined that or thought about it, but here we are. Let's see how this goes. I'm totally invested in this Bloodline Sami Zayn storyline. Like, this is one of the best storylines in professional wrestling. I will say, not only one of the best, it is the top storyline in professional wrestling, and it's got me hooked. I just want to see how this ends. But man, overall, this show was fun. With the exception of it's weird, the 3-way tag team match and the opening tag team match, just very chaotic and just weird and just, I don't know. It hopefully they fix some things and they notice it. But man, the Gunther Ricochet match, man, that was amazing. That was fun. Man, I recommend you guys watch that match. Man, the Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn Bloodline feud storyline. Man, that storyline is getting good. They're adding more depth to it. They're planting the seeds of when the Bloodline eventually kicks Sami Zayn out, or when Sami Zayn turns on him and say, "This has been a sham all along. I never want to be with you guys," blah, 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 and he rejoins Kevin Owens. So that's going to be interesting how this plays out. But man, I do think when that turn happens, whether it's the Bloodline kicks out Sami or Sami again reveals like, "Oh, this was a schmoz, I lied, I never blah blah blah," there's going to be a lot of logic to it, and that's going to be fun. And man, this is a good way to go into 2023 with this storyline. So I'm excited. So that is my review for the December 16th episode of WWE Smackdown. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notifications so that way you are notified when the House of Wrestling drops its latest content. Follow me, Dedrian180, on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Man, a lot of wrestling coming up, a lot of news, a lot of stories. Man, let's have fun with professional wrestling.